Dear Libra, something sacred is falling on your heart this September. A large sum of money, a symbolic burial, and divine justice written in the stars just for you. You didn't stumble upon this message by chance. You were spiritually guided here because the universe has something it must reveal to you now. Let me ask you something. Have you been feeling a deep inner shift lately, like your soul is shedding an old skin you no longer recognize? Has your intuition grown louder, nudging you in moments of silence, whispering truths you're not sure you're ready to face? If so, it's because you're standing at a divine threshold. September opens a portal that only those truly ready can step through. But to walk through it, Libra, you must leave something behind. This isn't just a forecast, it's a spiritual calling, a message wrapped in mystery, healing, and cosmic fire. This month, 3 divine energies are converging in your life: financial abundance that feels overdue, the closure of an emotional cycle, what we call a burial, a sacred letting go, and the descent of divine justice, not punishment, but correction, balance, restoration. You are not watching this because you're curious. You're watching this because your soul is ready. Here on Zodiac Whisper Tarot, we don't just predict. We guide, remind, and awaken. My only job today is to bring through the message that your higher self has already asked for, perhaps in your dreams, perhaps in your quiet prayers, or perhaps in the tears you cried silently when no one was watching. Libra, this is not a season of small signs. This is a life-altering shift. Something that once bound you emotionally is coming to an end. Someone maybe from your bloodline will depart, either in spirit or in energy. And something you were once denied, money, inheritance, recognition, healing, will finally find its way back to you. But listen closely. You will not receive this just by waiting. You must show up with full presence, full trust, and full willingness to face what must be released. Before we go further, let me pause to say this with all my heart: thank you. Your presence here, your likes, your comments, your subscriptions has created something more than a channel. You've helped build a sacred space for seekers, truth-tellers, and healers. Each time you engage with this community, you breathe life into this work, and you make these messages ripple out to those who need them most. And trust me, Libra'll want to stay until the end of this reading. What the universe is revealing for you isn't just personal, it's generational. It's spiritual. It's legacy work. So now, I ask you, what brought you here today, dear Libra? What pain are you ready to bury? What blessing are you ready to claim? Comment below and say, I am ready to receive divine justice. Let the universe see your commitment. Let your voice echo through the spiritual field. Let's begin. Your story is about to unfold, and it's nothing short of miraculous. Sometimes what we carry isn't even ours. It's passed down through silence, through stories half told, or not told at all. Libra, if you've ever felt an invisible weight on your chest, a heaviness you couldn't name, perhaps it belongs to someone in your bloodline who never had the voice to say, "This hurts." And perhaps, this September, that voice is choosing you to speak for them. That's not a burden, it's an initiation. One that marks the ending of a pattern and the beginning of something honest and free. The phrase, a burial, might sound unsettling at first, but it doesn't always refer to death in the literal sense. Often, it marks a turning point. A sacred goodbye. Sometimes what must be buried is a role you've played your entire life, the peacekeeper who always puts others first, the one who stays silent to avoid conflict, the emotional container for everyone else's chaos. But every soul has a limit, and your soul, dear Libra, is now asking for something different. It wants release. It wants to be seen not as the one who carries, but the one who chooses who lives. When the Death card appears alongside the Ten of Pentacles and the Four of Swords, it points to more than just individual transformation. It often signals a deep ancestral cycle reaching completion. You may be the one called to stop a story that has echoed through generations, stories of financial struggle, emotional suppression, unspoken grief. You may be the one who chooses healing over silence. And yes, healing can be loud. It can feel messy. It can even shake the structure of what once felt stable. But it also clears the path for truth to finally take root. There is something incredibly sacred about acknowledging that we are not here to repeat, but to redeem. And redemption doesn't always happen in big, miraculous ways. Often, it begins with something small, something within. A conversation you were too afraid to have. A boundary you finally draw. A journal entry where you write what you've never dared to say aloud. This is what healing looks like. It's not perfect. But it's brave. And in the quiet moments of that courage, you may start to feel something soften. You may begin to notice how your breath flows more freely when you're no longer holding space for everyone else at the expense of your own peace. You may even find that in letting go of a role you were never meant to carry forever, you finally make space for love, not the kind you have to earn by sacrificing yourself, but the kind that meets you right where you are. There's a passage I often return to when I speak with people like you, those who feel everything, who try to keep the peace even when it costs them pieces of themselves. It's the reminder that, when a seed falls to the ground and dies, it doesn't end, it begins. There's wisdom in surrender. Not in giving up, but in giving over to truth, to new beginnings, to a life shaped not by inherited obligation but by conscious choice. You don't need to save the whole lineage. But if you simply decide to stop carrying what isn't yours, to lay it down, to bury it with compassion and finality, you will become the pivot point. The person future generations will look back on and say, because of them, things changed. So I ask you, with gentleness and with sincerity, is there a grief, a guilt, a generational fear that you've been holding on to that doesn't belong to you? And if so, are you ready to release it? If your heart whispered, yes, then leave a comment below with the words, I release what is not mine. Let it be seen. Let it be spoken. Let this be your burial for something old, and your gateway into something sacredly new. Not every injustice is loud. Sometimes it comes in the form of a whisper, an inheritance never mentioned, a document misplaced on purpose, a promise conveniently forgotten. Libra, if you've ever felt erased, rewritten, or overlooked in your own family story, this part of your journey is about to shift the ink back into your hands. The energy surrounding you now is not about revenge or punishment. It's about truth finding its way home to you. And not because you demanded it, but because you were willing to carry integrity even in silence. There's something dignified, even holy, in the way you've kept peace. You chose harmony over war, reflection over reaction. But sometimes, peace becomes too expensive when it costs you your identity, your rights, your voice. This is the season where the scale begins to tilt, not because you're pushing it, but because the weight of the truth is finally heavier than the lie. The Justice card, when paired with the Judgment, tells a powerful story. It speaks of balance being restored, but not randomly, it's targeted. The kind of alignment that comes after long years of patience, grace, and often quiet suffering. It brings to the surface what's been hidden, not to shame or destroy, but to correct. When the Tower appears with this energy, yes, it may feel disruptive. But disruption isn't always chaos. Sometimes it's clarity breaking through confusion. It's the moment a lie falls apart because it no longer has a structure to support it. And right beside it, Ace of Pentacles. Tangible restoration. A gift. A contract. A payout. Something you can hold in your hands and say, "This is mine," and it always was. If you've been the person who sat at the table smiling, knowing the truth but choosing silence for the sake of unity, you're not alone. And now, you're not voiceless either. You're being invited to choose truth, not to fight, but to free. And what's more empowering than justice is the act of reclaiming your role in the story without needing anyone else's permission. Now would be a powerful time to write down the things you were too afraid to say. The moments you dimmed your voice to keep the room calm. The things you let go of that were never meant to be taken. And then, burn that page not in anger, but in closure. Let that ash become part of the soil where your self-worth begins to grow roots again. This is what divine justice looks like when it operates in real life. It's not theatrical. It's steady. It moves through paperwork, decisions, conversations, signatures, opportunities. It shows up in inboxes and unexpected phone calls. It weaves through small moments that suddenly feel right. And no, it doesn't come because you asked for payback, it comes because the energy you've held all along is finally matched by the outcome you deserve. We often talk about faith as something we direct outward toward a higher power, toward a bigger dream. But faith also means trusting that truth doesn't rot underground. It rises. Slowly, then all at once. And when it does, it doesn't just set you free, it sets the record straight. So ask yourself with courage and softness, where in your life did you choose peace over justice? And are you ready now to receive without guilt what was always meant for you? If your heart says yes, comment below, "I am ready to reclaim what belongs to me." Because saying it out loud is how energy moves. And this time, Libra, the story gets rewritten with your name in the right place. There are moments in life when we fear that letting go means losing everything. We grip so tightly to the roles we've played, to the versions of ourselves that were praised, needed, or depended upon even when they no longer reflect the truth of who we are. But Libra, here's the paradox the universe is revealing to you this month. What you thought you had to sacrifice in order to be safe, loved, or useful is the very thing keeping your blessings at bay. Sometimes, abundance doesn't arrive because we're not ready to receive it as the person we've become. It waits patiently, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because divine timing respects not only your efforts, but your readiness to let what's false fall away. And often, what needs to fall away is the belief that you must earn what you were always worthy of. This is where the real shift happens. Not in your bank account, but in your mindset. The energy of the Ace of Pentacles paired with the Six of Pentacles and the Nine of Cups is a beautiful confirmation that your financial life is aligning with a much deeper emotional truth. These cards speak of tangible rewards, unexpected money, a legal win, an inheritance finally released, or a job offer that seems too good to be true. But they don't show up because you pushed harder. They arrive when you step out of survival mode and into self-worth. When you stop viewing money as a transaction for your suffering and begin to receive it as a reflection of your value. One of the most powerful things you can do right now is revisit your relationship with wealth. Not just how you spend it, but how you receive it. Sit with this question: have I been rejecting financial blessings because a part of me believes I haven't struggled enough to deserve them? If so, it's time to shift that story. Write a new financial plan, not based on lack, but on possibility. Not rooted in fear, but in vision. Imagine yourself building a life not from compensation, but from creation. And don't be surprised if this shift begins with a sense of loss. Often, the doors that open to abundance swing only after another has closed. A goodbye may be required. A version of you may need to be buried, a version who played small to keep the peace, who accepted less to be accepted more. That part of you served its purpose, but it cannot walk into your next chapter. Let it go with grace. Write the letter. Light the candle. Say the goodbye. And then open your hands. Because what follows may feel miraculous, but it isn't. It's simply divine fairness unfolding in real time. In fact, it's often in the aftermath of endings that we're finally clear enough, empty enough, willing enough to receive. If you've ever felt like nothing was happening while you were in the valley, let me remind you, even in the darkest soil, seeds are germinating. Growth happens underground before it bursts into the light. I've seen it in people who surrendered control and then received a call about a job they hadn't applied for in months. In families that healed overnight after years of silence. In bank accounts that shifted after a single, brave conversation. These are not coincidences. These are natural outcomes when inner alignment meets outer opportunity. So ask yourself gently, what am I willing to release so that my hands are free to receive? And if your answer is, everything I'm no longer meant to carry, then write it, say it, declare it. Let the world and yourself know that you are not waiting for a reward for your pain. You are stepping into a life that reflects your purpose, your growth, and your truest worth. There are certain moments when reality begins to feel a little softer, like something just beneath the surface is trying to reach you. Maybe it's the sudden scent of your grandmother's perfume in an empty room. Maybe it's a dream that keeps repeating off a childhood home, a kitchen light still on, someone smiling at you from the corner of your memory. Libra, when these moments arrive, don't brush them off. Don't explain them away. What you're experiencing may very well be the presence of a legacy whispering to you a reminder that you're not walking this path alone. You come from a line of women who carried more than they spoke of. Strength wrapped in silence. Love sewn into every meal. Wisdom pressed between the pages of family stories no one dared to write down. Now, in this cycle of your life, one of them is reaching across the veil not to burden you, but to bless you. Not to ask for anything, but to give you what was once withheld: truth, courage, clarity, direction. When the High Priestess and the Moon appear together, they speak of intuition, memory, and the quiet power of ancestral guidance. The Four of Wands shows us that the home we long for may not be a place but a connection, a memory, a warmth that holds us steady as we move through transition. And the Six of Cups reminds us that the past isn't gonites imprinted in who we are, how we love, and what we fear. But what if, instead of avoiding those imprints, you welcome them? What if the dream was not a sign of longing, but a message that something is ready to be healed. You may begin to notice patterns repeating, numbers like 1111 or 444, the soft flutter of white feathers in unexpected places, or an internal pull toward a part of your heritage you've never explored. These are not coincidences. They're confirmations. And they often come when you are about to step into something bigger than yourself. A purpose. A calling. A promise that was made long before you knew it existed. In astrology, this period marks a time when your 12th house, the house of ancestry, spiritual inheritance, and inner healing may be activated. It's a time when what is hidden becomes a source of strength, not shame. You might find yourself revisiting childhood memories, noticing patterns you inherited without consent, and feeling a deeper responsibility not to repeat, but to redeem. This is sacred work. And it begins with acknowledgement. Take a moment to connect. Light a candle. Write a letter to the woman who gave you more than genetics. Thank her. Ask her what you need to remember. Sleep with that letter under your pillow for 3 nights. Not because it's a ritual, but because it's an act of trust. When you're ready, burn the letter and release its message into the air. You might be surprised what opens inside you after that. Sometimes, our most divine guidance doesn't come in the form of answers, but in the feeling of being remembered by someone who left this world long ago, but never stopped loving us. When we allow ourselves to receive that, something inside begins to steady. We stop trying so hard to be the one who knows, and instead become the one who listens. You may not have asked for this role. But Libra, if you're here, it's likely because you've been chosen not to carry the burden, but to carry the light. And what a beautiful thing it is to realize that in healing your story, you're healing hers too. If your heart feels that truth, comment below. I am open to the blessings of those who walked before me. Let their legacy live through you. Let your story be the bridge that finally brings it home. There comes a moment when the version of you that once kept the peace, carried the weight, and softened your voice for the comfort of others must be laid to rest, not with anger, but with honor. Libra, this is that moment. The you who dimmed your light so others wouldn't feel small, who molded yourself to fit the expectations around you, who chose silence over truth just to keep the illusion of harmony. That version is not your failure. It was your survival. But now it's complete. And what comes next requires you to rise as someone entirely new. When the Empress meets the Magician in a reading, it is a cosmic invitation. One speaks of creative power, feminine strength, and abundance. The other is action, manifestation, direction. Together, they don't ask for permission, they declare transformation. With the Chariot and the World, the story evolves. You're not only moving forward, you're completing a cycle. And the Ace of Wands, pure fire, reminds you that the spark of something extraordinary has been lit inside you. What you do with it now is entirely up to you. It's no longer enough to carry potential. It's time to act on it. And that starts with something simple yet revolutionary: saying no to roles that make you shrink. No to being the emotional sponge. No to being the backup plan. No to narratives that expect you to tolerate what no longer aligns. This is the month to declare, out loud and often, that you are no longer available for the version of life that keeps you playing small. In self-help and energy healing work, we often teach that our outer world reflects our inner state. So if you've been called to shift your wardrobe, reorganize your space, move your body in new ways, it's not just aesthetics. It's alignment. The more you embody your next chapter physically, the more the universe responds. Try something simple. Walk differently. Stand taller. Light a candle before you get dressed. Change the background of your phone to something bold and affirming. These acts, though subtle, are declarations. They say, I'm not who I was. Watch what I become. One of the most powerful practices I recommend during energetic rebirths like this is writing. Specifically, try this every morning for 7 days. Write 3 times the sentence, I am the creator of my new reality. This isn't just about affirmations, it's about rewriting the energetic imprint of your subconscious. You're not waiting for change anymore. You're initiating it. The idea of rebirth isn't always glamorous. Often, it starts with grief. The letting go of what felt familiar, even if it was painful. The mourning of people or dynamics that no longer feel right. But grief is not weakness. It's acknowledgement. It's what clears space for power to move in. You've spent so much time being the breeze that others leaned on. But now, you are the wind that shapes the forest. You are the current that moves the tide. You are the architect of your destiny, not because someone handed you that title, but because you finally claimed it. The quiet strength you've cultivated is becoming visible. Tangible. And the world, Libra, is ready to respond. Not to who you've been, but to who you're becoming. So I invite you, with full presence and no apology, to declare it now in the comments. I am no longer who I was. I am who I choose to become. Let that be the stone you place over the grave of your old self with love. And let your next step be the first breath of a leader reborn. When you arrive at this point in the journey, Libra, it's not just the end of a reading, it's the threshold of a new reality. You've walked with me through the symbolic burial of an outdated self, through the quiet unraveling of roles you no longer need to play, and into the fierce return of everything that was always meant to find its way back to you. And now, standing in the stillness of this moment, I want to remind you of something that perhaps you've forgotten in your silence. You were never invisible to the universe. Every tear you didn't let fall in public, every truth you swallowed to keep the peace, every act of love you gave without being asked, they were all witnessed. They were not wasted. Heaven doesn't forget devotion. And in September, Libra, heaven responds. You don't need to beg for justice anymore. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. The time for proof is over. Now is the time for embodiment. You are no longer the one carrying the weight for others. You are the one being lifted, because your soul chose truth over convenience, growth over safety, and light over pleasing. So I ask you, what would happen if you trusted, truly trusted, that everything you need is already on its way to you, not because you hustled for it, but because you healed enough to receive it? What if you allowed this month to be the one where you stop hiding, stop apologizing, stop making yourself smaller so others can be comfortable? This isn't just about astrology. It's not even just about tarot. It's about your power to take what you've learned here and make it real in your life. Light the candle. Speak the words. Write the truths. Take the step. Reorganize your space. Declutter your mind. Dress like your future self. Start the project. Forgive what's behind you. Claim what's ahead of you. The journey you're on isn't linear. It spirals. And every time you return to this moment of clarity, you get stronger. You get louder in your silence, bolder in your truth, clearer in your energy. You start magnetizing opportunities that reflect who you've become, not who you used to be. So if something inside you feels deeply aligned right now, if your heart is whispering, "This is for me," I invite you to take a sacred breath and type these words below. I am ready to live in truth. I am no longer afraid. Let it echo across the energy of this space. Let it be a signal to your higher self, your ancestors, your future reality that you have returned to your power. If this video touched your heart, helped you remember who you are, or gave you even one sentence that felt like it was meant just for you, please click like to let the universe know you're receiving. Subscribe to Zodiac Whisper Tarot if you want to keep walking this path with me, because your journey doesn't end here, right? Evolves. And share this message with someone who needs light today. You never know whose healing begins with your courage. Libra, child of the cosmic scales, remember this: justice is real. Love is real. And so are you. Until next time, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for allowing me to whisper what your soul has always known.